The sensor arrays flickered with data that made no sense. Commander Bryn stared at the readings, his four eyes narrowing in confusion. Something was approaching the horizon belt, and his computers refused to classify it properly. "Lyra, run a diagnostic on the long-range scanners," Bryn said, tapping his claws against the console. "These readings are corrupted." The Corellian science officer's tentacles danced across her station. "Sir, I have run 3 diagnostics. The scanners are functioning perfectly. That signature is real." Tactical Officer Drent grunted from his position. The massive hammer-fist warrior leaned forward, his rocky hide scraping against his chair. "Impossible. Look at those power fluctuations. No ship maintains reactor stability with those variations." Bryn had to agree. 40 years commanding this observation station had taught him what a proper warship looked like. Every species in the galaxy followed certain principles. Reactors belonged in the center for protection and balanced power distribution. Hull plating followed mathematical patterns for optimal energy dispersion. Weapon systems positioned according to firing arc efficiency. These were universal truths. The vessel approaching them violated every single one. "Visual confirmation," Bryn ordered. The main screen shifted, and silence fell across the command center. The ship looked like someone had built it from spare parts found in a scrapyard. Hull sections varied in thickness randomly. Some areas gleamed with fresh plating while others showed obvious patchwork. The reactor signatures came from at least 7 different locations throughout the vessel. Weapons jutted out at angles that made Drent wince. "What species builds like this?" young Ensign Pola whispered. Lyra checked her database. Hull markings identify it as human, vessel designation, Defiant Spirit, classification. The database lists it as a battleship. Drent snorted. "That wreck is a battleship. Humans must be very desperate or very stupid." Bryn opened a communication channel. "Unknown vessel, this is Commander Bryn of the Galactic Council Observation Station. You are approaching the Horizon Belt neutral zone. State your intentions." Static crackled for a moment before a voice responded. The translator struggled with the human language before settling into clear speech. "This is Captain Wade of the Defiant Spirit. We are passing through. No hostile. Intentions. Captain Wade, you should be aware that this region is contested by multiple powers. Several species claim territorial rights here." "Noted," Wade replied, his tone casual. "We will stay in recognized neutral corridors." Bryn found the human's relaxed attitude disturbing. Did he not understand the danger? "Captain, I strongly recommend you alter course. 3 major fleets patrol this area regularly." "Appreciate the warning, Commander. We will proceed with caution." The channel closed. Bryn exchanged glances with his officers. Lyra shook her head slowly. "His ship barely qualifies as space-worthy by our standards. The hull stress points are all wrong. Those reactor placements will create power distribution nightmares. And look at the weapon mounts. Half of them will interfere with each other if fired simultaneously." "Perhaps humans have different engineering principles," Pola suggested. Drent laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "There is only one way to build a warship correctly. Physics does not change between species. These humans are either ignorant or suicidal." Alarms blared across the station. Bryn's display lit up with new contacts. "Rithari War Fleet entering the sector. 16 vessels, Dreadnought-class formation." Every officer tensed. The Rithari were known throughout the galaxy for their military precision. Their doctrine, the Codex of Naval Supremacy, had remained undefeated for 3 centuries. They believed in overwhelming force and perfect execution. "They are hailing the human ship," Lyra reported. Bryn brought the communication onto his speakers. The Rithari Admiral Reth's voice was cold and sharp. "Human vessel, you are trespassing in Rithari sovereign space. Withdraw immediately." Wade's response came quickly. "According to Galactic Council records, the Horizon Belt is neutral territory. We have as much right to be here as you do. The Council's authority is not recognized in this sector. You have one standard cycle to leave or be destroyed. Bryn watched the human ship on his display. It made no move to flee. The defiant spirit simply continued its trajectory, steady and unhurried. "The human is insane," Drent muttered. "One ship against 16 Ratharii warships, he will be vaporized." Lyra ran calculations on her computer. Tactical analysis confirms. The Ratharii fleet has sufficient firepower to destroy a vessel of that class in approximately 43 seconds. If the human raises shields and attempts evasive maneuvers, survival time extends to perhaps 2 minutes. "Should we intervene?" Pola asked. Bryn shook his head. "We are observers only. The Council does not have military authority here." Still, something bothered him about the situation. The human captain sounded too calm, too unconcerned. The Ratharii fleet moved into attack formation. The spear configuration, Bryn noted, absolutely textbook. Ships arranged at precise intervals, overlapping shield harmonics, coordinated firing solutions. Beautiful and deadly. "One cycle has passed," Admiral Reth announced. "Human vessel, this is your final warning." Wade's voice came through clear and steady. "I appreciate the warning, Admiral, but I think we will stay right here." "Then you will die. All vessels, power weapons, target the human ship, prepare to fire on my command." The Ratharii ships glowed as their massive energy cannons charged. Targeting beams locked onto the defiant spirit from a dozen different angles. The formation tightened, each ship in perfect position. Bryn found himself leaning forward despite himself. Lyra had stopped working, her tentacles still. Even Drent watched silently. Across the galaxy, they knew observers from many species were monitoring this confrontation. The Ratharii made examples of those who defied them. "All weapons charged," a Ratharii officer reported. "Firing solutions locked." Admiral Reth paused for dramatic effect. "Fire." In that moment, Captain Wade opened a channel. His voice carried an edge that had not been there before. "Well, I guess we are doing this the hard way." The human ship surged forward, directly toward the Ratharii fleet. Energy beams lanced through space, where the defiant spirit had been a fraction of a second earlier. Commander Bryn watched in disbelief as the human ship rolled 90 degrees, twisted sideways, and accelerated at an angle that should have torn its hull apart. "How did he know where they would fire?" Lyra asked, her tentacles trembling. Drent studied his tactical display. "Lucky guess, the next volley will correct for evasion patterns." The Ratharii fleet adjusted smoothly. Admiral Reth barked orders and his ships responded with mechanical precision. Their formation shifted, compensating for the humans' movement. 16 ships moved as one organism, each maintaining exact distance from its neighbors. The second volley fired. This time, the Ratharii targeting computers had predicted 3 possible evasion routes and covered all of them. There was no escape. The defiant spirit dropped suddenly, killing its main engines completely. Momentum carried it forward while gravity from a nearby asteroid field pulled it down. The energy beams passed through empty space above the ship. "Unorthodox," Bryn admitted. "But he cannot evade forever. The Ratharii will adjust their pattern." "Sir, look at the human ship's reactor output," Lyra said, bringing up detailed scans. "The power is shifting between different reactor cores. When he rolled left, 3 reactors on the right side dumped energy to port thrusters. When he dropped, the ventral reactors pushed everything to the upper hull stabilizers." Bryn understood immediately. A normal ship had one main reactor that distributed power through the vessel. If you wanted to maneuver, you had to route energy through conduits and relays, which took time. The human ship's scattered reactor design, which had seemed like terrible engineering, allowed instant power redistribution. "Clever," Bryn said quietly. "What we thought was a design flaw is actually an advantage." The Ratharii fleet spread out, forming a wider net. They were adapting their doctrine, the encompassing star formation. It was slower but impossible to evade. Every cubic meter of space around the target would be saturated with weapons fire. The defiant spirit changed course again, But this time it was not evading. It was charging directly at the gap between two Ratharii cruisers. "Suicide run," Drent declared. "The human has lost his mind." The cruisers opened fire, crossfire patterns designed to shred any vessel caught between them. The human ship's shields flared bright blue, absorbing some hits, but more beams struck the hull directly. Pola gasped, "The hull is not breaching. How thick is their armor?" "It is not thick everywhere," Lyra said, studying the scans. "Look, the sections where they are being hit have triple-layered plating. The sections facing away have minimal armor." "That makes no sense," Drent protested. "You cannot predict where enemy fire will come from in a battle." But Bryn was beginning to understand. "You can if you force the enemy to shoot from specific angles." He pointed at the display. "Watch, the human captain is controlling the engagement geometry. He is making the Ratharii fire from positions where his ship is strongest." The Defiant Spirit rocketed between the two cruisers. At the last possible moment, it rotated and fired its main batteries point-blank into both vessels. The shots were not aimed at shields or armor. They targeted thruster assemblies and sensor arrays. Both Ratharii ships reeled, their careful positioning ruined. One drifted into its neighbor, shields clashing and sparking. Admiral Reth's voice cut through the chaos. "All ships maintain formation discipline. Execute anvil maneuver. We will crush this insect." The Ratharii fleet responded immediately. Ships moved with practiced precision into a sphere formation, the Defiant Spirit at the center. It was the Codex's answer to a fast, maneuverable opponent. Create a ball of overlapping fire zones with no escape vector. Bryn ran the numbers. No ship has ever survived the anvil maneuver. Once locked inside, there is nowhere to run. The sphere tightened. 16 warships, perfectly positioned, began charging their weapons simultaneously. In moments, they would fire inward. The human ship would be hit from every direction at once. Lyra counted down. Firing solution achieved in 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. The Defiant Spirit did not try to escape. Instead, lights began flashing along its hull in sequence. Mechanical sounds echoed through the vacuum as massive clamps released. "What is happening?" Pola asked. The ship's midsection separated from its bow. Then the engineering section detached from the stern. Weapons pods broke away, and command modules split apart. In the span of 3 seconds, one ship became 7 independent pieces, each with its own engines and power supply. The Ratharii fired into the center of their sphere, but there was no longer a single target. 7 pieces scattered in different directions, moving independently. The carefully calculated firing solutions struck empty space or hit each other's beams. Chaos erupted in the Ratharii formation. Ships desperately tried to retarget, but their doctrine had no protocol for this. The anvil maneuver was designed to trap one vessel, not 7 small craft moving unpredictably. Drent stood up from his station, his rocky face showing genuine shock. "That is not a ship. It is a mobile puzzle that breaks apart during battle." One of the separated human sections, marked as engineering, began launching small objects. At first, they looked like debris or escape pods. Then they activated, revealing crude weapons mounted on commercial mining drones. "They weaponized cargo equipment," Lyra said, her voice filled with a mix of horror and admiration. "Those are asteroid mining drones with military-grade lasers attached." The drones swarmed around confused Ratharii ships, targeting sensors and communication arrays. They were not strong enough to destroy a warship, but they were not trying to. They were blinding the fleet, disrupting coordination. Admiral Reth's voice crackled with fury. "All ships, reform standard battle line. We will destroy them one section at a time." But the Ratharii captains were not used to independent action. They waited for precise orders for doctrine to guide them. The human sections did not wait. They moved like predators, exploiting every moment of confusion. Captain Wade's voice broadcast openly across all channels. "You folks really love your formations. must make life simple, always knowing exactly what to do. 3 more Ratharii ships took damage, their shields failing under coordinated strikes from multiple human sections, attacking simultaneously from different angles. Bryn watched as everything he knew about naval warfare broke down before his eyes. This was not a battle. It was chaos given purpose. Inside the command module of the Defiant Spirit, Captain Wade studied the tactical display with calm focus. Around him, his bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements coordinated through years of training together. Port Weapons Section reports ammunition at 40%, called out Lieutenant Ames from the weapons station. Engineering Section requests permission to try the turbine trick, added Chief Engineer Okoye through the comm system. Wade considered for half a second. Approved. Do not blow yourself up, Okoye. No promises, sir, came the cheerful reply. Aboard the observation station, Lyra frantically worked at her computer, trying to build a predictive model of human tactics. Every algorithm failed. Every simulation showed different outcomes. She input the variables again: ship specifications, weapon capabilities, crew size, tactical doctrine. The computer returned an error message: insufficient tactical doctrine data. They are not following any established pattern, she reported to Commander Bryn. I cannot predict their next move because they do not seem to be planning more than 3 moves ahead. They are reacting, Bryn said, understanding dawning. Not executing a plan, they are responding to what the Ratharii do in real time. Drent shook his head. That is a recipe for disaster. Battle requires planning, coordination, and discipline. Does it? Bryn gestured at the display, where 2 more Ratharii ships were limping away with damaged engines. They seemed to be winning. The engineering section of the Defiant Spirit suddenly vented a massive cloud of superheated plasma from its exhaust ports. To Ratharii sensors, it looked like catastrophic damage. 3 enemy ships moved in quickly to finish off what appeared to be a crippled target. The plasma cloud expanded, blocking sensors and visual tracking. The Ratharii ship slowed, trying to acquire targeting locks through the interference. Weapons fire from within the cloud struck all 3 ships simultaneously. The engineering section had not been damaged at all. It had created an artificial nebula and used it for cover. Resourceful, Bryn admitted. The bridge crew of the Defiant Spirit coordinated through rapid, informal communication. No lengthy orders or formal protocols, just quick exchanges that spoke of deep trust and understanding. Ames, you seeing what I am seeing? Wade asked. The cruiser on our 6 with the damaged starboard shields. Yeah, I got him. Take the shot when ready. Already done, sir. Firing now. The exchange took 4 seconds. A Ratharii command structure would have required confirmation, verification, and approval. By the time they processed the opportunity, it would have passed. Admiral Reth's voice thundered across the Ratharii command channel, which the observation station was monitoring. All ships, regroup at Rally Point Theta. Reform spear formation. We will destroy them with overwhelming coordinated force. The Ratharii fleet began to pull back, gathering into their textbook formation once more. It was what they knew, what they trusted. The Codex of Naval Supremacy had guided them through countless battles. Surely it would not fail now. But as they reformed, the 7 human sections did not press their advantage. Instead, they began linking back together. They are reassembling, Pola observed. Why, they have the advantage separated. Lyra checked her sensors. The Ratharii are forming up for a massed assault. The human sections would be vulnerable to concentrated fire individually. Together, they present a unified defensive profile. Drent watched in fascination as the puzzle pieces of the Defiant Spirit clicked back into a single vessel. The process took less than 4 minutes and looked well practiced. They have done this before, Drent said. Many times. Look at how smoothly the connections seal. This is not experimental technology. This is refined practice. Wade opened a channel to the Ratharii fleet. Admiral Reth, I am going to offer you some free advice. Your formations are impressive, truly beautiful to watch, but beauty is not always practical. Silence, human. You have merely delayed your destruction. Maybe you should ask yourself why the Codex has not adapted in 300 years. The universe changes, Admiral. Tactics should change with it. The channel cut off. Admiral Reth was done talking. The Retharii fleet, now reformed into the Spear Formation, began its approach. 16 ships moving in perfect synchronization, their combined firepower enough to crack a moon. This was the might that had conquered 12 systems and defeated 40 different species. The defiant spirit, battered and scorched from the battle, turned to face them head-on. Inside the observation station, Ambassador Trill had arrived in the command center. The Galactic Council representative watched the confrontation with keen interest. "Commander Bryn, your assessment?" Trill asked. Bryn considered carefully. "The human has fought well, but the Retharii are bringing their full strength now. I calculate a 15% chance of human survival." "I see, and what makes you give them even 15%? "Because, Ambassador, I have stopped trying to predict what they will do. Every assumption I make about them proves wrong." The Retharii fleet charged their weapons. The Spear Formation was designed for a single, overwhelming alpha strike that no defense could withstand. Once fired, the target simply ceased to exist. Wade studied his displays calmly. His crew was tired, running on adrenaline and determination. Systems throughout the ship showed damage. Ammunition was low. Shield generators were overheating. But they were still flying, still fighting, and that was enough. "All sections report status," Wade ordered. The responses came quickly. Every section was operational, though barely. His chief medical officer reported. Minor injuries, but no casualties. His engineering teams had patched the worst damage. His weapons crews were rationing their remaining ammunition. "All right, people," Wade said, his voice carrying to every section of the ship through the intercom. "They are going to hit us with everything they have. We have got one chance to make this work. Remember that simulation we ran, the one we all agreed was completely insane?" Lieutenant Ames grinned. "The one where we calculated a 30% survival chance." "That is the one." "Sir, that plan was theoretical. We have never actually tested it in combat." Wade smiled. "Well, no time like the present. Prepare for Protocol Madhouse." Across the ship, the crew began preparations. On the observation station, sensors detected unusual power redistributions throughout the human vessel. Lyra tried to interpret the data, but it made no sense. "What are they doing?" she whispered. Bryn did not answer. He simply watched, knowing that whatever happened next would rewrite tactical manuals across the galaxy. The Retharii fleet completed its final approach vector. 16 warships, perfectly aligned, weapons charged to maximum. The Spear Formation had destroyed entire planetary defense networks. One human ship, no matter how unconventional, could not survive what was coming. "All vessels report ready," a Retharii officer announced. Admiral Reth allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had fought well, he admitted privately. Their tactics were unusual, even clever, but cleverness meant nothing against raw power and perfect execution. "Fire," he commanded. Dozens of energy beams lanced toward the defiant spirit, enough destructive force to vaporize a small asteroid. The shots were timed to arrive simultaneously from 16 different angles, overwhelming any possible shield configuration. The human ship did not evade. It could not. There was nowhere to go. Instead, something impossible happened. The ship fragmented again, but this time differently. Each section fired its emergency thrusters at full power in opposite directions. The pieces spread apart like an exploding star, moving faster than should have been possible. The Retharii weapons' fire converged on empty space where the ship had been. A few beams clipped the separating sections, but the damage was minimal. Most of the devastating salvo hit nothing. "Impossible," Admiral Reth breathed. Structural stress of that maneuver should have torn the hull connections apart. But the humans had designed those connections specifically to handle extreme separation forces. Every joint was over-engineered, every coupling reinforced beyond normal specifications. What the Ratharii considered wasteful redundancy was exactly what allowed the maneuver to work. The 7 sections of the Defiant Spirit scattered across the battlefield, each one moving independently under its own power. But unlike before, this time they did not regroup. They spread out in a wide formation, surrounding the Ratharii fleet. Commander Bryn leaned forward in his seat. They are using the fleet's own formation against them. The spear is designed for forward assault. The Ratharii ships are vulnerable from the sides and rear. Drent studied the tactical situation. But those human sections are small. They do not have enough firepower individually to threaten a Ratharii warship. Watch, Bryn said quietly. The human sections began moving in a coordinated pattern that looked random at first. Each one took a different path, different speed, different angle. But Lyra, watching through her analytical lens, suddenly saw the mathematics behind it. They are synchronizing their attacks without communicating, she said in wonder. Look at the timing. Each section will arrive at firing position at the exact same moment, but they are not transmitting coordinates to each other. They are using prearranged timing and trust. 3 human sections converged on a Ratharii cruiser from different vectors. The cruiser's shields could not protect against attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. The sections fired in perfect unison, their combined weapons overwhelming the shield generators. The cruiser went dark, disabled, but not destroyed. The human sections moved on to their next target before the Ratharii could respond. They are not trying to destroy the fleet, Bryn observed. They are trying to disable it, targeting engines, weapons, shields. They want to remove threats, not kill crews. Ambassador Trill nodded slowly. An interesting distinction. Most species do not show such restraint in combat. The Ratharii fleet tried to respond, but their tight formation was now a liability. Ships blocked each other's firing lines. Turning to face the human sections meant breaking formation, which the Codex strictly prohibited during active engagement. Several Ratharii captains began making independent decisions, trying to adapt to the chaotic situation. But this created confusion in the command structure. Some ships followed doctrine rigidly while others improvised. The perfect synchronization that made the spear formation deadly fell apart. Admiral Reth felt control slipping away. His entire career was built on the Codex, on the certainty that perfect execution of established tactics always prevailed. But these humans fought without doctrine, without predictability, without respect for the rules of warfare. "All ships, free engagement," Reth ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. "Individual captains are authorized to maneuver independently." It was the right tactical decision, but it came too late. The Ratharii crews were not trained for independent action. They hesitated, uncertain, looking for orders that now would not come. The human sections exploited every moment of uncertainty. A weapons pod swept past a Ratharii destroyer, firing at point-blank range into its engine assembly. The engineering section released more mining drones, which swarmed a command ship sensor arrays. The command module, where Captain Wade directed the battle, stayed mobile and elusive, calling out targets and coordinating attacks. Inside the command module, Wade worked with his crew through rapid verbal exchanges. There were no lengthy tactical discussions, no complex planning, just quick decisions made and executed immediately. Ames, the battleship at heading 270, looks slow. "Confirmed, his port thrusters are damaged. I can exploit that." "Do it, Akoi. How are we on power?" "Running hot, sir. Reactors at 85% capacity. I can give you maybe 10 more minutes at this pace." "Make it 15. "That is not actually possible, sir." "Do it anyway." Akoi laughed over the comm. "Aye, sir. 15 minutes of impossible coming up." Two more Ratharii ships suffered critical damage and withdrew from the battle. The once mighty fleet was scattered, disorganized, and demoralized. They had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that refused to fight the way they expected, that turned their strengths into weaknesses. Admiral Reth made a decision that would haunt him for years. He had one option left, one move that might salvage something from this disaster. It was not in the Codex. It violated every principle of honorable warfare, but desperation made monsters of even the most disciplined. Helm set collision course with the human command module, maximum speed. His officers stared at him in shock. Ramming was something pirates did, not professional naval officers. Sir, the Codex explicitly forbids. I know what it forbids, Reth snapped. Execute my order. The massive Ratharii flagship turned ponderously and began accelerating toward Wade's command module. It was 5 times larger than the human section, with engines powerful enough to push asteroids. Once at full speed, nothing could stop it. Wade saw the flagship's trajectory change and understood immediately. Well, that is new. Ames, can we outrun him? Negative, sir. He is faster and we are low on fuel. Collision was inevitable in 40 seconds. The other human sections were too far away to help. For the first time since the battle began, Captain Wade had no good options. 30 seconds until impact. The Ratharii flagship bore down on Wade's command module like an avalanche. Every calculation confirmed the same result: total destruction. Wade activated the shipwide comm. All sections converge on my position, emergency speed. Sir, we cannot reach you in time, Lieutenant Ames reported from the weapons section. Just get here and bring cable. On the observation station, Drent stood up. What is Cable going to do against a ship that size? The human has finally lost his mind. But Lyra was already running simulations based on the human section's trajectories. Her tentacles trembled as the results appeared. He is not trying to stop the flagship, he is trying to redirect it. 20 seconds until impact. The 6 other sections of the Defiant Spirit raced toward Wade's position from different angles. Each one trailed long magnetic cables from their emergency tow systems. The cables were designed to rescue disabled ships, not for combat. 15 seconds. The Ratharii flagship was close enough that Wade could see its bridge windows. Admiral Reth stood there, his face set in grim determination. 2 ships on a collision course, both commanders committed to their path. 10 seconds. The human sections arrived, 6 ships coming in from 6 different vectors. In perfect synchronization, they fired their magnetic cable clamps at the Ratharii flagship's hull. The clamps struck and locked on with metallic clangs that echoed through the vacuum. 7 seconds, the cables pulled taut. Each section was now physically connected to the massive flagship by reinforced tow cables. 5 seconds. All 6 sections fired their thrusters at maximum power, pulling in different directions. The flagship was enormous, far more massive than all of them combined. But physics was physics. Force applied from 6 different angles created complex stress vectors. 3 seconds. The Ratharii flagship's trajectory shifted by a fraction of a degree. Just a tiny change in angle, barely measurable. But at these speeds, tiny changes mattered. 1 second. The flagship missed the command module by less than 30 meters. The massive ship's bulk created turbulence that rocked Wade's section violently, but they survived. 0. The flagship shot past, unable to stop or turn quickly enough to try again. The 6 human sections released their cables and scattered before the Ratharii could target them. The maneuver had worked, but it left every section dangerously low on fuel and power. They had given everything to that one desperate gambit. Wade let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Good work, everyone. That was closer than I like. Sir, the Ratharii flagship is trying to come about, Ames warned. But his momentum is carrying him away. It will take several minutes to reverse course. Those few minutes were enough. The human sections began reassembling, linking back together into a single ship. The process was slower this time, hampered by damage and depleted reserves. But piece by piece, the defiant spirit became whole again. Admiral Reth watched from his bridge as his fleet limped around him. 11 ships disabled or destroyed. His flagship out of position. His perfect formations shattered. The Codex had no protocols for this situation because the Codex assumed that perfect execution led to perfect victory. "Admiral, the human is hailing us," a communications officer reported. Reth wanted to ignore it, but something made him accept the call. Perhaps he needed to understand what had just happened, how everything he believed in had failed. Captain Wade appeared on the screen, looking tired but not triumphant. "Admiral Reth, you fought well. Your crews are skilled and your ships are impressive." "Do not patronize me, human." "I am not, I mean it. But your doctrine is too rigid. You follow the Codex perfectly, which means anyone who has read the Codex knows." "Exactly what you will do." Reth felt anger rising. The Codex has guided the Ratharii to victory for 3 centuries. Against enemies who also followed predictable doctrines. But what happens when you face someone who does not play by those rules? Wade paused. "Your formations are beautiful, Admiral, maybe too beautiful. Sometimes the universe needs ugly solutions." The channel closed. Reth stared at the empty screen for a long moment, then he turned to his remaining officers. "Signal the fleet, we are withdrawing." The admission of defeat tasted like poison, but continuing would only waste more lives and ships. The human had proven his point thoroughly. As the Ratharii fleet began jumping to faster-than-light speed, one by one, Ambassador Trill turned to Commander Bryn. "I need to speak with the human captain, immediately." Bryn sent the invitation and Wade accepted. The defiant spirit received docking clearance at the observation station. As the battered ship approached, Bryn could see the full extent of the damage it had sustained. Hull breaches, scorched plating, disabled weapons ports. The ship had been pushed to its absolute limits. "How did they survive?" Pola asked quietly. Lyra had been running analysis for the entire battle. Her computer had processed every maneuver, every decision, every moment. "I have been trying to build a predictive model of human tactical thinking. Every attempt has failed." "Why?" Bryn asked. "Because they do not rely on predictable tactics. They rely on adaptability. My computer cannot model adaptability because it requires intuition and creativity, not just logic." Drent crossed his arms. "So they won through randomness, through chaos." "No," Bryn said slowly, understanding forming in his mind. "They won through organized chaos. There was a plan, but it was flexible. They trusted each other to adapt the plan as needed. The Ratharii fought as one mind controlling many ships. The humans fought as many minds working toward one goal." The defiant spirit docked smoothly despite its damaged state. Through the viewport, Bryn could see the human crew beginning repair work immediately. They moved with tired efficiency, already planning for the next crisis, the next impossible situation. Ambassador Trill prepared to meet with Captain Wade. Representatives from a dozen other species had requested to attend. Everyone wanted to understand what they had just witnessed. Bryn filed his report with a simple conclusion. "Human military doctrine, if it can be called that, represents a fundamental challenge to established tactical theory. They do not fight to dominate. They fight to survive, and they are very, very good at it." On the observation deck, young Ensign Pola watched the human ship and asked the question everyone was thinking. If one human ship can do this, what could a fleet of them accomplish? No one answered. The implications were too vast, too unsettling. The galaxy had just learned that humanity played by different rules, and those rules, strange as they were, seemed to work. The conference room held representatives from 24 different species, each one curious about the human who had just rewritten their understanding of naval combat. Captain Wade sat at the head of the table, looking somewhat uncomfortable in the formal setting. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. Counselor Prime Vaxis opened the discussion. "Captain Wade, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. We have many questions about your tactics and your ship." Wade nodded. "I will answer what I can, counselor." A Talesian admiral spoke first. "Your vessel, the Defiant Spirit, violates numerous principles of established ship design. The reactor placement alone should make it unstable. How does it function?" "It functions because we designed it to be flexible, not efficient," Wade explained. "Most species optimize their ships for specific scenarios. We built ours to handle unexpected situations. Yes, our power distribution is less efficient than yours, but when we need to shift energy quickly, we can do it faster than any ship in the galaxy." Lyra raised a tentacle. "Captain, I ran over 400 simulations trying to predict your tactics. Every simulation failed. How do you make decisions in combat?" Wade considered the question. "We train for principles, not procedures. I do not tell my crew exactly what to do in every situation. I trust them to understand our goals and find ways to achieve them. When Lieutenant Ames saw an opening, she took the shot without waiting for my approval. When Engineer Okoye needed to try something risky, I trusted her judgment." "That sounds like chaos," a Hammerfist general commented. "It is controlled chaos," Wade corrected. "We practice together until we understand how each person thinks, then we let them think." Commander Bryn asked the question that had been bothering him throughout the battle. "Captain, why does your ship separate into sections? What advantage does that provide?" "Flexibility again," Wade said. "If we are one big target, you know where to shoot. If we are 7 small targets, you have to divide your attention. Plus, if one section gets destroyed, the others survive. We do not put all our capability in one basket." Ambassador Trill leaned forward. "You mentioned that you studied Admiral Reth's tactics. How did you know he would follow the Codex so rigidly?" Wade smiled slightly. "Because everyone follows their doctrine rigidly. That is what doctrine means. You create rules for how to fight, then you follow those rules. The problem is, once you commit to a doctrine, you become predictable to anyone who has studied it." "But humans must have military doctrine," a Corellian strategist protested. "How else do you coordinate fleet actions?" "We have guidelines, not rules," Wade explained. "We teach our people to understand why tactics work, not just how to execute them. That way, when a tactic does not fit the situation, they can modify it or ignore it completely." The room fell silent. The concept was almost heretical to species who had built their militaries on strict hierarchies and detailed procedures. Drent broke the silence. "Your approach sounds wasteful. You prepare for thousands of scenarios instead of perfecting responses to the most likely ones." Wade met his gaze steadily. "You are right. It is wasteful. We spend years training our people to think independently, to trust their judgment, to work together without constant supervision. It would be much more efficient to just give them clear orders and expect obedience." He paused. "But which one of us is repairing their ship right now, and which one is explaining how they won?" The blunt truth stung, but no one could argue with it. Counselor Vaxis steered the conversation back. "Captain Wade, what does humanity want from the Galactic Council? Are you seeking alliance, territory, trade agreements?" "Honestly, we just want to pass through without getting shot at," Wade said. "The Horizon Belt is neutral space according to your own laws. We were not looking for a fight. Admiral Reth started it. We just finished it." "You could have fled," Bryn pointed out. "Why stand and fight against such overwhelming odds?" Wade thought about that. "Because running teaches people. They can push you around. We have learned in our history that sometimes you have to stand up even when the odds are bad. Otherwise, every bully in the galaxy thinks you are easy prey." Ambassador Trill made a note. "The Council will formally recognize the Horizon Belt as neutral space, open to all species. We will also open diplomatic channels with humanity if you are interested." "We appreciate that." A military analyst from the Retharii delegation, not Admiral Reth himself, asked a careful question. "Captain, would you be willing to share your tactical methods, perhaps through an exchange program or educational materials?" Wade considered it. "I can share what I know, but I should warn you, our methods work for us because of how we train our people from childhood. We teach independence and creative thinking starting very young. You cannot just copy our ship designs or tactical manuals and expect the same results. The tactics come from the culture, not the other way around. The meeting continued for another hour, covering technical details and diplomatic formalities. When it finally ended, Wade stood to leave, but Bryn caught him at the door. "Captain, may I ask you something privately?" "Of course." "During the battle, when Admiral Reth's flagship was about to ram you, did you know your cable maneuver would work?" Wade met his eyes honestly. 80% sure, maybe 75. Bryn felt his blood chill. "You risked your life and your crew's lives on 75% certainty." "No," Wade corrected gently. "I trusted my crew to execute a difficult maneuver under pressure. The ship is just metal and circuits. My people are what makes it work. I would bet on them at 50% odds." He left Bryn standing there, processing that statement. 3 days later, the Defiant Spirit departed from the observation station, its repairs complete enough for travel. As it jumped to faster-than-light speed, Lyra ran one final simulation. The computer finally produced a successful model of human tactics. The key factors it identified: trust, adaptability, and creative problem-solving. Then it added a note that made Lyra laugh. "Warning, model assumes human behavior will remain unpredictable. Confidence level low." Bryn read the report and smiled. "That sounds about right." Across the galaxy, military academies began requesting human tactical consultants. The Rethari quietly introduced. New training focused on adaptive response. A dozen species started redesigning their ships with modular capabilities. The human approach to warfare, strange and inefficient as it seemed, had proven its worth. Not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple recognition that battles rarely go according to plan. And when plans fail, the species that adapts fastest survives.